Hello, welcome to this video on the assessment tasks for the Risk Management Unit in Certificate 4, which is BSBRSK401A Identify risk and apply risk management processes. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to come to the workshop and we've looked at the major concepts behind this unit, but if not, certainly on the campus there are various resources there. The learning chapter is probably the best one for you to work through. Make sure you complete all those learning resources and review the other materials there before you start the assignment. I'm going to talk about Part A first. So Part A, usually around knowledge questions, and they're reflected via the requirements of the unit. So in this case there are 3 questions in Part A. Name and briefly describe the international standard for risk management. Now that can be downloaded from vCampus or you might already have it in your possession. It's quite a lengthy document. I don't need you to go into a lot of depth with that, but please at least summarise using the headings that are in the contents page and the reasoning behind the standard, which are usually in the preface and the foreword. And a picture would be quite handy. So this is a slide from the PowerPoint display that is on the vCampus. Those at the workshop didn't necessarily get a chance to see this, but it's a summary in a pictorial form of the standard, so the ISO 31000 standard. And if you want to put part or all of that in with your explanation and then just refer to the processes that are described there and shown, that would be quite okay for me too. Alright, so I'm going to move on to number 2. List and briefly describe the aspects of legislation or ethical practice that may apply to the use of risk management practices. Include those relating to privacy, anti-discrimination, work health and safety, codes of practice or environmental protection. So sometimes we answer these particular legislative understanding requirements in other units. So they're quite often the foundation of every other unit in Certificate 4. So if you've already done that, certainly copy and paste your answers into there, but just make sure it applies to risk management in particular. There may be some extra things to think about when we think about risk management. And I'm not asking you to look at, in detail at all those laws, but at least be familiar with the requirements such as confidentiality, the duty of care for people looking after themselves and others in their workplace, that's to do with work health and safety. Discrimination, so not discriminating on gender or all those other things that are in anti-discrimination, which is sexual orientation, membership of particular groups, race, ethnicity, that sort of stuff. So all of this would apply to risk management in a way. So just a list of those and briefly describe how they may impact on risk management and how we should take them into account. Number 3, list and briefly describe the relevant organisational policies, procedures and templates that may relate to or include risk management activities, and also a note on how they are audited or could be audited. So anything that's in your organisation currently that's to do with risk management, sometimes it might not be named up that way. Certainly if it's in work health and safety, there'll be named up parts to do with risk management, looking at the likelihood or the probability against the impact or the consequence, and coming up with a risk assessment. So that's obviously related to this. But there may be other things that relate to risk in other areas to do with legal compliance or finance or staff shortages, things like that. So you might have to tease that out a bit rather than, you might find a folder that says risk management, but I'm going to ask you to look through all of the things you're aware of and maybe research a bit further to see which ones apply to risk management. Okay, so that's the Part A stuff out of the way. Part B now is more to do with you showing that you have the skills to identify risk and apply some risk management strategies. So let's look at Task 1. So using your own organisation or another, if you have access to another one that might have more relevant policies and templates, that's okay too. Number 1, identify a project or an activity that your team is or has been involved with recently that will become the focus of the risk management activities that follow in this section. Briefly describe that activity or that project so I can get an understanding of the risk context, if you like. Number 2, identify all the risks associated with this activity and indicate how you decided these. nominate the tools that we use that would help you identify those risks. So this is one of the first parts of the risk standard, isn't it? To identify the risks. Ensure that you cover the various contexts of risk that apply to the project or the activity, and including at least 4 that are outside work health and safety, so just outside of personal injury and injury to others. So that means maybe to do with the environment, to do with finance, to do with legal compliance, to do with staffing. It could be a whole manner of things that would fit in this sort of risk context. So I think in the notes, sometimes it refers to the risk wheel. So that's this wheel, if you like, with all these spokes, and the spokes represent all the different categories or contexts of risk within an organisation. It sometimes helps to sort of draw up that wheel for your organisation or for this activity or project that this is going to be about. And once again, another great picture that'll tell me 1,000 words that you understand that. So all the context for the risk that apply in this case. So you'll find that wheel described in the PowerPoint that is on the V campus, or you may have been sent by email. So number 3, list the risks in a risk analysis template of your own design, or you can choose one from the other resources that you've got. So in the workshop notes, the workshop learning chapters, there are some pretty good templates that are shown in there, and you can use those. They're in Word, so you can just use them directly out of there. There's a group of example documents called Example. That's Example Limited, I think, and there's a policy, there's a management plan, there's all sorts of stuff in there, but you'll also find some pretty useful templates if you want to use those. You can design your own, but there's lots and lots of them around. The Department of Education one, which was the nice colourful one that we handed out and which is available on the B campus. This has a nice risk assessment table on it, and the document itself sort of shows how you can list the risks and work your way across as you work through these tasks. So this one's okay as well. And it also has that summary of the international standard and how risk management processes are meant to work. So that's a pretty handy one too, that summarises risk management. You may be able to use that. And any other one that you find, the one you use at work, is probably okay. I'm just looking at you to complete the tasks as they're set out. Whatever template you use will be fine. What else have we got here? Oh yes, we want the table to show the identified risk with the current controls that are in place. So that'll give us an idea, okay, we've identified the risk, we've identified the controls that are currently there that are trying to help minimise that risk. We move on to number 4, we need to categorise the risk now using the following criteria. So that's this matrix that we just talked about. There are a number of other matrices that you can use. This Department of Education one, it looks at customer service and reputation, human risk, and a few others, so it's a pretty easy one to follow, but you can categorise your own if you wish that fits best for your organisation. So we want the impact and likelihood, that's sometimes also called the consequence or the probability. So impact, consequence, probability or likelihood, and come up with a risk assessment based on that using this sort of matrix. So prioritise and rank the tasks and explain the methodology used to do that. So need to prioritise them. Why? Obviously we work on the ones that contribute to the highest risk first, and work through them and rank them. Update your template and include some risk action plan numbers and treatment ideas. So in other words, we're going to come up with a few plans here. I think the next one actually tells you you've got to do 3. So 3 risk treatment plans. On top of the controls that are currently there, you're going to think of some others that will reduce the risk even further, and hopefully down to an acceptable level. So number 7 is prepare those risk treatment action plans for at least 3. It'd be great if you do more than 3, but most people will only do 3 when it says at least. And make sure they're the highest priority ones, and describe how they'd be developed and the appropriate planning principles and the consultation that would be used. So remember, communication and consultation is an integral part of this process, and including described in the standard. So we need to pay a fair bit of attention to that. Right, move on to task 2 now. So implement those risk treatment plans over the period of the assignment. And if you don't have the opportunity to implement it, then I might need to creatively think about, okay, how would this turn out if I implemented them? What problems might I foresee? And then just based on your work experience and your knowledge, you still should be able to answer that question. Moving on to number 2 then. Monitor progress, that's improvement or otherwise, and review the effectiveness of the treatment plans. Once again, you can invent this intelligently based on your own knowledge and experience if you can't actually, or you haven't come up with something you can implement because everything's already in place. But hopefully you'll have something you can suggest and implement and see how effective that has been. This is number 3 now. Write a short report about the review process, discussing how the evaluation would be conducted and who would be involved if such an evaluation were to be the most effective as it could be. Okay, once again, the consultation and review part of the standard, but also the monitoring and evaluation side of the standard. Both of those are crucially important if we're going to have effective risk management. So by the time you've done all those things, you'll have demonstrated to me that yes, you can identify risk and apply some strategies to reduce it. So I wish you well. If you have any troubles, please contact me and I can guide you a little bit further. But I wish you well, all the best. Cheers.